Welcome to BikeFans.com's exclusive series, Jay's All Out Blitz. A look inside the key challenges and issues facing NFL players and the Minnesota Vikings in 2013. And now your host, Tom Moore, and former NFL linebacker, Jay Foreman.
Welcome, everyone, to BikeFans.com and our Halloween edition of Jay Foreman's All Out Blitz series. I'm Tom Moore, and I'm joined by former NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. And Jay, it's been 2 weeks since we last spoke, but many of the problems the Vikings have been experiencing all season have continued. So let's start at the quarterback position. And we have now seen a wildly inaccurate Josh Foreman against the Giants and a hesitant Christian Ponder coming back against the Packers, and he seems unable to find his open receivers. It appears, after hearing Leslie Frazier yesterday, that Ponder's going to start again this weekend after a pretty poor performance against the Packers. If you were head coach, Jay, what would you do at the quarterback position for the remainder of this year?
To be honest with you, I'd probably go with Josh Foreman. He doesn't know the offense as well as Christian Ponder, but Christian Ponder has shown what he is. He's a hesitant quarterback. It just seems like he lacks overall confidence, and he's just a step or two behind. And until he shows consistent improvement on that, maybe in practice or maybe next year in preseason, I want to see what Josh Foreman can do. We didn't trade for him, but we signed him during the season. He has tremendous talent upside. He brought him in for a reason. You just have to take the lumps because I figured it won't get any worse as long as he plays a lot better than he did on Monday night. And as a former player, I think they didn't put him in a good enough position to succeed because to throw the ball over 50 times and he's only been there for 10 days was a little too much.
You've seen this before in your NFL career at the teams you've been on where, an owner goes ahead and ponies up the money, brings in somebody from free agency, and a Matt Castle spends more money on a Foreman. Is it normal that you would hear buzzing from that owner saying, hey, I put this money in for these quarterbacks to evaluate. Why are you continuing to look at the guy who seems like he's had the opportunity?
Yeah, sometimes, if they really want a guy or they figure they can make a splash either in free agency or, during the season, of course, the owners are paying the bills. They're going to want to see some return on their investment. I saw it with Rob Johnson and Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie was the better quarterback, better football player. Rob Johnson had a bigger paycheck and hadn't been playing. So that if you remember correctly, against the Tennessee Titans in the Music Stadium Miracle, Rob Johnson started after playing one game during the season. That was a decision that came down from ownership, and it turned out to bite us in the butt. So, yeah, owners always nibble and dabble in stuff that they shouldn't be, but they pay the bills so they can do whatever they want.
I'm going to ask you to be a defensive coordinator, and I know you're capable of doing that for us here. And on defense, the Vikings just simply can't get off the field on third down as it's become a running joke even in the national media. And they rank dead last in allowing third down conversions. What's wrong with the defense? And if you were that defensive coordinator, what would you do to fix it or at least make it better right now?
I would just dummy down the coverages. They don't run a lot of coverages, but maybe you can go down even more. To be honest with you, they just look very hesitant. So I would have them be more aggressive at the beginning of the game. So therefore, maybe a little bit more man-to-man defense, maybe some combination coverages where they can see the ball and really get after it. It just seems like they're just a little hesitant, not really confident in what they can accomplish. But then also, especially against the Packers made some really big plays.
From a defensive player's standpoint, how difficult is it if you get to the middle point of the season and the coach says, we're going to make wholesale adjustments, and they run the Tampa 2 defense? Is it hard for them to really change it and say, hey, we're going to go to a tighter man-to-man? Or is that something the defensive players can adopt to pretty quickly?
Pretty quickly, just because most defenses have a lot of man-to-man in it anyways, and literally that's how you get drafted as a corner. So you can play man-to-man defense and a little bit aggressive mentality. It might be a welcome change, to be honest with you. When you're struggling like the Vikings have, I think that it's something that where players are looking for just something new and something that can help them get jump-started into playing the type of defense that they all wanted to.
Well, it's funny, you and I talked a lot about Aaron Henderson going into the season, and he's actually been the most consistent linebacker the last 3 or 4 games. But Chad Greenway seems to be making fewer plays this year. When you look at him and evaluate Greenway, what do you see out of him this year?
I don't know if he's hurt or it's a different defense or just the defensive line in front of him isn't playing as well. He's not making as big of plays, and he's not as consistent as he was as years in the past, but I think that has a lot to do with the people in front of him and the situations that the defense has been in. I think he blitzed a little bit more last year. They're not blitzing as much. Also, I think that Aaron Henderson is playing better, so then therefore it's taken away from his playmaking ability. But when you have a lot of young guys up front, and then big Kevin Williams has been hurt, that's going to affect directly on Chad Greenway.
It's interesting because the key to the Tampa 2 defense that you taught all of us was it's about pressure from the front four. And what teams have seemed to do is they are negating that by getting the ball out quickly. Based on that, what would you do if you negate the pass rush like that? What should they do in the defensive coverages to get those short, quick patterns that are popping?
That plays right into the hands of the Tampa 2, because the Tampa 2 is to have everybody see the ball and rally to the ball and make tackles. And the problem with the Vikings, they haven't been making a lot of tackles in the open field. So when teams are doing the short routes, you just need to rally up and make the play, not give them any yards after contact. So when you see receivers from Green Bay break tackles and they run for another 10 or 15 yards, that not only takes away the confidence of the players, but then also the coaches to call a defense that's actually set up to stop those particular plays.
This past week, it was the trade deadline, and it was pretty clear that the Vikings were shopping Jared Allen before the trade deadline, but they couldn't finalize a deal with at least what was rumored to be a couple teams they were talking to. As a player, how hard is it for Allen to play the next 9 games, knowing more than likely his time in Minnesota is going to come to an end?
Well, he's a true professional. He's one of the best players out there, and he's obviously going to go out there and play. One, to leave a good impression on the Vikings, but then two, he's going to go out there and earn some money for next year. It's, I guess, I wouldn't say baffling, but a little bit weird that you want to essentially bring back your best defensive player, your most legit pass rusher, but it comes down to a money thing and an age thing and maybe where the direction of the team might be going. So it's going to be hard, but I think that he has the right mindset, like always, to go out there and perform.
Trades are becoming more common now, and they weren't as much when you were playing because of the free agency rules. Did you ever find yourself mentioned in trade rumors, and if so, what was that like?
Well, I got traded from Buffalo to Houston. It was kind of odd just because I was going into my restricted year, which is I was already tendered, already had a contract, and that was the year either the team would pony up and give you a new contract or you'd be not getting anything for you. Fortunately enough, the Houston Texans were coming up as an expansion team, and they had a kick return that they drafted in, a supplemental expansion draft, and the Buffalo Bills wanted to sign an older guy that was really good friends with the head coach, and one thing led to another, but it was very odd just because you go from, in your third year, leading the team in tackles, second in sacks, and first in turnovers, and tackles for loss. And so you think you establish yourself as a player. And then, within literally hours and minutes, you walk into the stadium and the coach comes up to you and says, we decided to trade you. So it happens fast when it does happen. You always get caught off guard when it does happen, but it's part of the business.
So did you hear any rumors going on before it happened, or literally the first time they came to you and said you've been traded, that was it?
It was a little bit weird stuff in the off season, but it was one of those things that, hey, what can you do? You kind of try to block it out. You just kind of always figure, as long as I'm here until I hear something different. But when you're really playing for a contract, it adds a little bit more pressure. And essentially, it was the best move for me, and it worked out for the Buffalo Bills as well.
I was going to say, your career really took off after that, and I guess there are worse things than to miss the winters in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I got to go to Houston, so I was blessed in that point, and I did really well personally, so I can't complain at all.
On the Viking standpoint, Leslie Frazier's not complaining, but it sure looks like it's more of a when he is relieved of his duties rather than if. And I was curious from your perspective, you've seen this happen to coaches before in the middle of the season where it all seems hopeless. How hard is it for the players to concentrate on their assignments during the games that are meaningless in the standings and knowing that coaching staff probably isn't going to be there next year?
Well, it shouldn't be too hard because the one thing I learned is that the coaches are around a lot longer than players, and if you play well for coaches, 9 times out of 10, if you get later in your career, you better get a year or two, and sometimes 4 years more by playing for coaches that you played for in previous seasons. So it's not time to go out there and cash it in. It's time to go out there and actually move forward and play even better because that's what coaches want to see, what you can do, where you play hard and can you still sell out for the team when it's not ideal.
Okay. Elsewhere in the NFL, certainly the Vikings played the Cowboys this weekend. They had their own little controversy this weekend when receiver Des Bryant had a meltdown on the sidelines, first with Tony Romo and then Jason Witten when they lost the heartbreaker to Detroit last weekend. Are players able to quickly forget these altercations during the heat of the game and put it behind them?
Yeah, it's over usually by the time you get to the locker room, and sometimes what you see on TV and what's reality is totally different, and it's sometimes you get blown out of proportion, but cooler heads usually prevail because at the end of the day, both guys want to win and win as many games as they can. Des Bryant's a passionate player. Jason Witten's a passionate player. Tony Romo's the quarterback. So if you're a receiver, you're not getting the ball, you're going right to the quarterback and find out why you're not getting it. It went on probably a little bit too long, but it's something that they took care of, and I imagine they'll come out and play even better this week.
Well, that's a scary thing for Viking fans, huh?
Yeah, I think Dallas is they're on the cusp of either turning the corner as a legit team, or they're just going to be the same old Cowboys, 9-7, 8-8, just with all the talent sitting at home.
Look at the NFC East. It seems like nobody wants to step forward and take it. This may be one of our first season where we see another 7-9 playoff team coming out of there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it comes from Jerry Jones. I think he wants to be everything. He wants to be the owner. I think he wants to be the GM, head coach, quarterback, running back, and defensive players. I think when he decides to let go a little bit, I think you'll see Dallas win a lot more games and be more consistent.
And down in Tampa, the Buccaneers, they're one of two winless teams along with Jacksonville. Is the problem with Tampa Bay with their talent or their coaching staff, or maybe both?
Well, you can't say talent. They've been beat up really bad with that. Mercer is taking up two of their best offensive linemen, and Hicks and Gavin Joseph. They're both power running game guys, and they're two of the best guards in the league. So they aren't able to run the ball as effectively as they were the year before, but they have talent on the outside. Obviously, they have a big hole at quarterback. The offensive line is pretty decent. The tight ends are young. The defense, talent-wise, is right up there with anybody in the league. So I hate to say it's the coaching staff, but I think maybe the style that Schiano is trying to implement down there just isn't working. Because when you come in with that type of authoritative style, sometimes it can, if it works right away, it's great. But if it doesn't, guys will be looking the other way and looking at other coaches to come in.
When you look around it on the positive sides of the NFL, at least record-wise, the two best teams appear to be the Kansas City Chiefs at 8-0 and Seattle Seahawks at 7-1. When you look at those teams, which do you think is built better for the deeper playoff run?
Oh man, that's the answer. 1A and 1B, both are great defensively. Put one edge to the other offense. I'd probably have to say Seattle. Slightly. They sputter sometimes on the road, especially. In
the case of Seattle, they've been pretty fortunate, and although you don't want to see your wide receivers get hurt, with Sidney Rice going out with an ACL, they now are perfect timing because Percy Harvin is eligible to come off of injured reserve. So things look like they're falling pretty good for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, they're pretty fortunate that Percy Harvin was able to come off of injured reserve and win the unfortunate injury to Sidney Rice, and so you're pretty much swapping two great receivers for one another. Ideally, you'd like to have both, but I guess it was good planning by Seattle, and it was fortunate that the injuries happened in the same week. So they'll be able to move right along. And I think Percy Harvin adds a different dimension and some more explosiveness. So I think that's what they've been searching for the first 18.
Turning for one question to you as we close up here in college football. As a Nebraska alumni, Jay, how stunned were you to see the Minnesota Gophers beat the Cornhuskers for the first time in 53 years this last weekend? And was it a good Gopher outing or simply a poor Nebraska showing?
Well, look, anytime a team wins, you can't take anything away from them. So it was a good Gopher outing, but, at the same time, Nebraska played poorly. But, the Gophers just lined up and beat it. So I think it was more of a mental thing that they weren't prepared to play. It's unfortunate that Nebraska lost, and we should probably never lose to the Gophers. And that's no offense to any Gopher program coaches or fans or anything like that, but we're a more established program. But they're doing some good things in Minnesota, so you got to give them all the credit. They handed it to us, and they deserve to win.
Will there be any ramifications on the loss in Nebraska country?
I don't think so. I think hopefully this is an eye-opening experience. They still can win out and get to the Big Ten championship, so that has to be the focus, and that's obviously going to be the focus of the fans. So we'll see here in about 48 hours and see where we're at with the team.
Well, we wish you good luck, and certainly we wish the Gophers well as they move on. And with that brings a close to this edition of Jay Foreman's All Out Blitz. And next time we'll hopefully talk about a Vikings second win or what the team needs to do the rest of the year to start preparing for the off-season rebuilding process. So until then, I'm Tom Moore.
And I'm Jay Foreman.
See you soon.